All righty. Today on the T Podcast, we have the new Downtown Development Authority and Downtown Lafayette Unlimited CEO Kevin Blanchard. We're going to be talking with him about the role and also kind of what led up to him getting into this role and what his plans are for the future and of downtown and the role. Yeah, so let's hang out and enjoy the show. So, Kevin, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah. So, I want to go ahead and get the conversation started in just a second. Let me get my presenting sponsor mentioned, and it is chasegroupconstruction.com. So, they are a local design build firm. You can check them out at their website. Like I said, chasegroupconstruction.com. Basically, they take the lead and become your one point of contact for the entire design build process. So if you're looking to build something or renovate a business, they have a diverse portfolio of projects that range from medical centers to popular restaurants and to multi-unit shopping center developments. Check them out. They're local and they support us. All right. So tell us a little bit about you. Are you originally from the Lafayette area?
I've been here since college. Actually, my wife Heather went to UL, and I met her here. I was going to LSU, and she was roommates with my little brother's girlfriend, if that makes any sense. And
wow!
So I kind of fell in love with a girl from Lafayette, and that's how I ended up here. But been here since.
Where are you originally from?
I went to high school in Shreveport. My dad is a Methodist minister, so it's hard to say like where are you from because I've lived a lot of places. If you don't know, like Methodist preachers kind of move around a lot.
So was he an evangelist type of preacher where he went from church to church, or did he have a home church that he kept moving?
Yeah, the Methodist church like moves you every few years,
like
just kind of automatically. So I've lived in Kinder, Baton Rouge, Gonzales, lots of places, Kentucky. But so normally I say Shreveport, but I was born in Sulphur. Louisiana. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But I'm one of those people, like by far I've lived in Lafayette the longest I've lived anywhere else, and I'm not leaving.
So when did you come into Lafayette?
I was just out of school. So I was probably 22, in the 90s, late 90s.
All right.
Had, a little bit more hair.
So I'm guessing what kept you in Lafayette was the lady.
Yeah. Well, it was that. And, Lafayette's just one of those places, I think, for a lot of people, not for everybody, but for a lot of people like me, it just clicked. I think it's like the right size. Like it's, I felt like this was, I'm the right size fish in the right size pond, things that I want to do, I can do here, but I'm not, I have a friend of mine says sometimes Lafayette's like just big Abbeville. And I kind of like that because it just feels like a really big, small town. I feel like you can know a lot of people and not feel overwhelmed,
I get that.
And people are pretty welcoming and, so that was part of it. And honestly, part of it was, my first job, I was working for the Advocate at the Acadiana Bureau as a newspaper reporter. And that was like a downtown job, and so I, from the beginning was like downtown and kind of, in on that, vibe and what that was like,
So your professional life, you are an attorney and a former journalist, and you've also specialized in urban development with your past roles, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But is that something you went to school for? Like, what did you go to UL for?
LSU.
LSU. Yeah. Sorry. I know you mentioned UL. That was your.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I was 17, I went to LSU to party, but for my degree, it was journalism. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I did law school a little bit later in life. I think I started having my wife and I had children, and that point I realized like I loved being a reporter, but it is not a very good way to support your family. You know, God bless journalism. You know, it just does not pay very well. And so law school from there.
I'm pretty much there.
Yeah,
So
I was gonna say, you know what I'm talking about. You know, you do it for love. You don't do it to get rich. You know,
that's exactly right. I have other little side gigs that I do that help bring in a little bit of other household revenue, but this is definitely a base for me. I do get a full-time pay on this, but it's there's more if you need it, especially in today's economy. It's I'm like, whoa, things have definitely gone up.
Right.
So yeah, real quick, how do you think Lafayette was back then compared to now? Like, what do you think has changed or gotten better? Mm-hmm. Like, what's your take on the Lafayette area in the past, give or take 20-something years?
That's a good question. You know, I think we sometimes get frustrated when we kind of look at some of the issues that we've been dealing with, and we're like, man, I wish there was just finally some movement on this or that. But when you do kind of look back and say, well, where were we in the late 90s? Like, we've come a long way.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just in the context of downtown, if you think about it, you know, when I got here in the late 90s, you know, the DLU and the DDA had been doing a really great job. They were about, 10, 15 years old at the time. Downtown Alive had started, and that was a really good way that people were starting to, trying to keep people downtown, because at 5 o'clock, after the courthouse emptied out, like there was nothing downtown. You know, I was here as a 22-year-old, still had energy and wanted to like go and do things after 9 o'clock at night. Not like I want to do that anymore, but and it was rough. Like there just wasn't a ton to do. And so, what happened downtown, especially in the 90s, was you did have some clubs and some other entertainment venues that sort of picked up and kind of carried the weight for a long time. For a long time, that was it, right?
Yeah.
If you wanted to do anything downtown that wasn't about like having lunch during the day, then it was about going to a club, right? And think about how that's changed. Like Jefferson Street now is like tons of retail, like some of the best shopping, some of the best restaurants. Like I think we take that for granted. Like, and when I was, I miss not having Chris's Po' Boys downtown. Like I remember that the other day. It was where Pamplona's is now, right? And you used to be able to go to Chris's and get my half Chris's special with my gumbo, right? I miss that. But man, like the number of really great places you can just go eat, not just for lunch, but for dinner downtown is like night and day from where it was like 20 years ago, So I
moved here in 2010, and I don't remember Chris's Po' Boys in downtown. Mm-hmm. I don't know when Pamplona opened, and I feel like it was around probably in that area of time. But I've seen downtown, specifically downtown, change a lot from, like you said, kind of majority of the bar scene. And, during the day, it's, professionals, and it's still kind of that during the day.
Sure.
Yeah. But at night, like if you were in downtown at night, you were here to party. Mm-hmm. That's what it essentially felt like. There might have been a few shops here and there, but downtown's an interesting place for business in general. And you rely on that walking traffic and that foot traffic. And, over the past, at least since I've been here, it'll be 14 years this summer, there's been a big push to try to increase foot traffic in downtown. Mm-hmm. And there's the whole thing about, we need more people downtown, but we don't have people living downtown. Mm-hmm. We need people to live to be able to walk in downtown. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of people...
chicken or the egg type thing.
Right. Yeah. And I was going to say that, but I felt like it was so cliche, but it is true.
It is true. Yeah.
And so over the past 14 years, man, especially maybe even less, maybe the past 5 years, real estate, being able to live downtown has gotten so much, I don't want to say easier, but more... I don't want to say accessible either, but there's a lot more space.
You have choice.
Yes.
Right. Look, when 20 years ago, if you wanted to live downtown, there were very few options. You know, there were a few of the houses and some other things that kind of holdovers, very few actual residential spaces downtown, like little one-off like spots above shops, right? They're still there and are still like really great spaces, by the way. Like there's some folks who have some really cool places to live downtown. But yeah, we had to fight for a long time as a community to figure out like, well, how do we like make this available to everyone, you know? And so I was just this morning, I was at the official ribbon cutting for the Monroe, right? 70 new market rate units right downtown. The municipal opened last year. They're up to, you know, they're full and like, you know, doing great.
Yeah, that was that's right there between Jefferson and Lee, right? It's like that split.
In the old federal building. Stephen Ortego has the Vermilion Lofts. They're doing well. You know, so now we're at a point where we've got, you know, more than 140 new residential units downtown, and there's more to come. We actually have a residential study that we commissioned with this group called Zimmerman Volk. They're a big residential market study type firm that looks at like, you know, what sort of demand do you have, and they've done a big study into Lafayette and sort of the downtown area to give us their opinion about where we stand. And the great thing is they did this same study a few years ago and a few years before that, and so they're actually going to be able to tell us like not just what's the snapshot for today, but to your point, how is it compared to 2011 and 2017 when they've done these before. We're going to do a lunch and learn later this month where they're going to, you know, show us their results. But the reality is there's demand, you know, and it's not that, you know, that it's like anything particularly special per se about downtown Lafayette. Downtown's a great place. People just generally want to live in a downtown environment. Any city that you live in, that's a thing that people are gravitating towards, you know?
So, I agree. Why do you think, downtown spots are where people want to be? Obviously, I think I can help answer that, but I want to know, like, from your perspective, like, why is downtown a spot that people would like to live?
So look, let me like tell you what your day looks like. Okay, you wake up and you go over and like get like a biscuit from Mommy Grocery or something, or maybe you walk over to Dwyer's and you get your breakfast there, and then you walk over to your office. You know, maybe you've got like an office that you got to go to, but maybe you work. You know, like more and more people do. You work from home, right? And so maybe like your office for that morning is like Rev, where you're going to meet somebody for coffee and like have a few meetings. Then you can like wander into a place for lunch. You following me?
Yep.
And like you go through your entire day, and at no point did you have to like get on Collie Saloon and like honk at anybody or get behind the person who's trying to turn left on Johnson Street saying like, who is this person, right?
Yeah.
None of those hassles, none of those bothers. You kind of, you know, downtown is just a really big neighborhood. And it's a neighborhood that was built in the way that this is just how we used to build cities,
right?
You know, where all your shopping, all of your offices, all your residential was all walkable, all in a place where you kind of like, you know, you see your butcher and your barber like all on the same day, right? We can move closer and closer back to that type of way of life downtown.
So I have a question about that. So I'm gonna write it down real quick,
okay?
Because I don't want to lose it, because I need to mention my sponsors real quick. But it's a interesting question, and I want your perspective on it. But I won't ask it yet.
Okay, good.
Let's see. Give me 1 second, and then okay. All right. So it is time to mention my sponsors, and we'll ask that question, and I think it's going to be a good question because I'm curious to hear your perspective on it. So real quick, we have our sponsors here. It's Music Academy, Acadiana.com. That's their website. They help you unleash your musical potential. So if you even have a little bit of potential in music, they can help you foster that and nurture it and help grow it. And if you don't have musical potential, but you have some inclination to want to learn, let's just say there's something that you feel like you want to learn music, they can teach students that are novices too, that have no experience. You can learn guitar, voice, drums, violin, audio production. Maybe instruments are not your thing, but you like to work the equipment on the backside, and you're a background type of person. They can help you with that. They've sent students to college and major music competitions. They've even appeared on, like I said, the competitions are American Idol and The Voice, founded by UL Lafayette Music School graduate Tim Benson. And he is also a member of the band, the emo cover band, Criers. Check them out. Really cool. This school is one of the most top-rated schools in Lafayette since 2016. They have over 500 students in any given month, just in and out, just learning music and improving. And they even have an in-house recording studio. I forgot about that. They've recorded several well-known artists. I don't want to mention the names, but they're well-known. I just rest assured they are. But their goal is to make music lessons fun, educational, and to help foster the next generation of musicians and creative thinkers. And their website, again, is musicacademyacadiana.com. All right. And then real quick, I was supposed to take this sponsor off, but they're still good to me, so I'm going to mention them one more time, and then I will take them off because they're done paying, unless they want to repay. If you're listening, I'll take more money. But say they are electronic protection systems. They're EPS-online.com. If you want a home security system that's a smart home security system, when you can control it from your phone or wherever, they can help you with that. 0 down payments, no out-of-pocket expenses, all that good stuff. And they even started whole home water systems. So if your water smells funny or tastes funny or has a lot of hard water, bad water, this company can help you get a whole home water system and make your water taste and smell better. They have a referral link that I will show you. It's link.developinglafayette.com/EPS, or you can just go to EPS-online.com. But make sure you mention that you heard about them from us, and maybe we'll get a little extra something from that. But anyway, that is our sponsors. And now on to this question that I have. So this question is, what happened? I don't know when it happened, but what happened to cause people in the downtown cores, however many years ago, to flock to suburban areas, essentially creating, urban sprawl? Mm-hmm. And what is your take on that? Why did that happen?
So I could do a whole hour on that, and that is a really good question. But I think the kind of the short answer is, I mentioned earlier about I think we weren't providing the sort of choices before that we provide now. The policies that we have had in place, and it's not just Lafayette, it's across the country. Made it easier and easier after the 60s and 70s to build newer subdivisions further and further out, and we've seen it here where you've got a sugarcane field that's, really low, yep, but it's also really cheap, right? And so if you can go and put a few roads in and plop some drainage down, and you can get a nice subdivision and with houses that people can afford and that are, you have the ability to finance through your bank, and, that's the system. That's the way everything kind of works. Unfortunately, we looked up in 2016 here, and we're like, man, that did not work out well for us long term, because we had built in all these places that, especially here in Lafayette and South Louisiana, are flat and flood prone. Yeah. And so we kind of had incentivized through our zoning policy and the way that we planned for roads and the way that we did not plan for making reinvestments back in the core of the city. And so we ended up with that system. I don't think it was on purpose, right? I think it was on accident. And so when you were a young professional in the last 30 years and, you were looking for a place to live, and, there are always going to be people who are like, I can't live downtown. I want a yard, or I want
some people, if their kids are very active, they want to have a backyard.
Right.
Yeah.
But we know that especially at the earlier stage in your career and at the later stage, right? I'm getting to the point now. My youngest is a sophomore at Lafayette High. Her two sisters are in college. At some point, we're going to be empty nesters, and that downtown option becomes available to me again, right? I don't want to have to mow a yard. I don't want to have to do any of that crap, right? And so before, and you know, kind of the problem is we just weren't able to provide in our like system options for those people. And so that's what's been happening now.
Yeah.
And that's why I think why you're starting to see some of the movement today, because Lafayette 10, 15 years ago had the good forethought to start doing things like changing its codes. And a lot of this boring stuff that we all argue about the comprehensive plan and about the UDC and about the LDC and all these rules, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what those were all about were about providing a better, more diverse choice on where people can live and what sort of developers are able to do, right?
Right.
So I think that's where we're at today compared to where we've been.
So that makes sense. So I mean, so something I took away, you said that it's not on purpose, that it feels like we accidentally caused that.
Yeah.
For one reason or another, and then now it sounds like we're trying to correct, at least partially correct that issue.
We had to. I mean, look, I think the 2016 floods were a wake-up call for everybody, you know, and so we've spent the last several years trying to figure out, okay, we think about it I used to be the public works director for the city for a couple of years, and
was it under Joey Durel?
For Joey.
Okay.
And, you know, historically, it wasn't just Joey, it was everybody. The balance of public infrastructure spending was about new roads and about taking a 2-lane road and making it a 4-lane road, you know. And so you've got roads like Eras Landry that, you know, it's a really big road for not that much traffic, but that was what we were focused on, right? We were like, one day, maybe, you know, we're going to need all these lanes, but we weren't spending money on drainage. Right? Well, that has shifted. Like since 2016, the shift has moved on these infrastructure projects to like, okay, what are we doing about the drainage issue? And we've taken some of those monies that have been, you know, instead of making it about roads further and further out, we've gone back to the core of the city and we're like, okay, well, how do we fix the infrastructure that we put in place 50 years ago?
The core of the city was also flooding.
Right. And the roads hadn't been fixed in 50 years. And like we hadn't been fixing the sidewalks, and we've been like neglecting a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so you've seen that happen in the last few years where there's been like a recognition that work needs to start happening. So so I'm very hopeful. You know, we've had a lot of those discussions as a community for the last many, many years, and we really are at a point now where we've gotten beyond sort of the initial talk phase and we're just doing the work now.
Okay. So you mentioned sidewalks and other infrastructure in downtown that is that needs to be better. One thing is, like you mentioned, the sidewalks is there are some sidewalks that look like the tectonic plates have shifted.
Yeah.
And like, you know, for wheelchair accessible environments, that's not good at all. With your role now as CEO of Downtown Development Authority and DLU, is that something that you're able to help in? Like what is your role comprised of as far as downtown goes? I mean, you said you were in public works under Joey Durel, and then now you're in this position. Like how does that former role translate into where you're at now? I mean, you're also part of LPTFA, right? So like, how do your former roles translate to what you're doing now?
I think if there is a strength to sort of the different things that I've done in my career up to this point is that I do understand how the government works and how some of these systems work and what it takes to do a public infrastructure project. And so my role at the DDA is to work with LCG and others to look at these infrastructure projects. You're talking about like the sidewalks and like how are we going to tackle that? You know, we actually have some projects in the early stages right now, in the design stages, to completely redo the streetscape, the sidewalks, the landscaping along Vermilion and Lee, right? The same way that we did on Jefferson, right? Where the end result is a much more walkable, much more accessible environment. We also have these areas on sort of our more minor streets, our side streets, where it's going to be a challenge. You know, we have in these areas where we've got these carriage curbs, and it's literally what it sounds like, right? It's when people rode carriages, they made the sidewalk high enough that you could like step off the carriage, onto the
Okay,
sidewalk.
I never
right?
realized that's why they were so tall.
Yeah, so you got like Main Street, like by Cathedral,
Yep.
between Cathedral and the courthouse, and they're like 2 feet high. Like that's what those are.
Okay.
Well, those are not ADA accessible. Those are not easy to handle, right?
No, you're right.
And so we're bit by bit going through those areas and just literally thinking, what is a creative solution to make this a more accessible environment for everybody? But it takes money and it takes planning. And so that's kind of what our job is at the DDA, is to be assisting the city in getting out ahead of some of those issues and identifying the projects and the money to do them.
Yeah. So we had a comment come through about 4 minutes ago from a Macklin LaFleur. Says, yeah, bring downtown back. Good eating places for sure. Need more shopping stores. Hate College Saloon and Johnson Street. Let's add to Northside by Target or Karen Crow. Plenty of land out in that area, which is kind of going back to the urban sprawl format. But still, the North Side is pretty much the neighbor of downtown. Mm-hmm. So I guess I want to kind of touch on that. In regards to downtown, is there anything that in your role or in your connections that would benefit the North Side of Lafayette?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question. So, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we started trying to get people to understand that downtown was sort of surrounded by a moat, right? You had Congress Street and Johnson Street and the Thruway, and those are these, big, large highways,
Yep.
That are this physical...
Basically cutting through.
Yeah, physical barrier between downtown and the neighborhoods on either side of downtown, right? And I think we've finally gotten... everybody to kind of understand what we mean, at least in the physical context, right? Well, it's too hard to cross the street, and it's too hard, Freetown and Laplace, when they developed as neighborhoods, they developed as part of downtown. There was no like easy dividing line between where was downtown and where was Laplace. It was just at some point the buildings got a little bit bigger, and you knew you were kind of in downtown at that point, right?
Right.
Like those streets, when we laid those out, those were when we started kind of making those boundaries for ourselves. But in the 80s, when we put the literal, like legal boundaries of the Downtown Development Authority together, we put them on those streets. And so in a way, we've sort of, boxed ourselves in from more than just a physical standpoint. It's from a kind of a philosophical standpoint too. And so what I've started talking to folks about, and I think that everybody is in agreement, is, we are stronger together. Downtown, Macomb, Freetown, Laplace, all of those neighborhoods that are our neighbors,
Yep.
Those neighborhoods are downtown neighborhoods. That is the way they were established. That's the way that they will be the strongest. That's the way that downtown will be the strongest. And so I am never going to see my job, and I don't think anybody downtown sees their interests as, well, on this side of Congress Street, it's our problem, and on this side of Congress Street, it's not our problem, right? And so, yes, a win for the North Side, a win for the Oil Center, a win for UL. Any of these areas that are in the core of the city of Lafayette, I'm going to try desperately to get more residential downtown, and I'm going to try desperately to get a hotel downtown. But if there's a hotel that opens up in Freetown or a hotel that opens up in Macomb on the Thruway, that's a win for downtown.
Okay.
And I will work to make that happen too. Does that make any sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. It's interesting when anytime I write about downtown or the neighborhoods adjacent to downtown, essentially like Place, Macomb, Vise, and all those other places, and Puerto Rico, Freetown. Whenever I reference the local area, that I try to, whenever in my headline I'll say something's coming up in this area near downtown, because those neighborhoods are proud of their neighborhood's identity, like Laplace especially. Like there's been a couple times whenever I wrote about a construction site or a project happening in the Laplace neighborhood, when I would say that it's either in downtown or near downtown, which I use those sometimes interchangeably, and I would get told, like, no, this is in the Laplace neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're right, but it's like right there by downtown. It's like so close.
Yeah, no, we're gonna get to a point where all those things coexist, because the reality is, like, that's the most natural way to think about all this.
Right.
It really is. You know, it's kind of, when you think about it, it's really artificial to think about that Johnson Street or Congress Street is somehow some sort of important dividing line, right?
I know.
Like, it's you know, people in Laplace shop, people in Laplace like have work to get to, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, as Laplace grows, so does downtown, and vice versa.
No, and I agree with that. I want to go back to the LPTFA position. So that's where you just came from, and you were the first ever executive director of that. And so if you don't know what LPTFA stands for, and you're scratching your head, it's Lafayette Public Trust Financing Authority. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but Kevin, I want you to explain, partly because I'm also curious, is what is LPTFA's role in Lafayette? Like, what is it? What does it do?
Yeah.
What is it for? And why were you the first ever executive director? Like,
sure. So every city about the size of Lafayette or bigger in Louisiana has a similar organization. It's a public trust, and they're a creature of state statute. So there's one in Baton Rouge, there's one in New Orleans, one in Calcasieu, one in Shreveport. The one here in Lafayette is one of the larger ones in the state, and one of the more active public trusts in the state. It's a community development investment organization.
Okay.
Quasi-public. Everything that the trust does is, you know, subject to open meetings law and public records and public bid, the whole bit, but no outside money. So every trust has a superpower, if you will, that they have the ability to go to the State Bond Commission and issue bonds, effectively borrow money. And so back in the 70s and 80s, the public trust here issued some bonds and relent that money in the form of mortgage loans and first-time home buyer loans to thousands of people, built up a great deal of assets over the years. And so cut to about 5-6 years ago, this had been a volunteer-led organization that had, you know, for example, gave like a $3 million gift to Muncus Park. That was one of the first big gifts to Muncus Park to get that work going, helped build the Rosa Parks Transportation Center, helped finance the SLCC construction, helped finance some student housing at UL, but in kind of a secondary role, right? The board decided 4 or 5 years ago that it was time to get a little bit more active. They owned some property in Laplace near downtown, right?
Yeah.
And so they hired me as the first executive director to sort of run the day-to-day. But what we did there was kind of take some of that property and put it back into commerce. And so we had a old warehouse that we renovated into the headquarters for SchoolMint, which is a software company that relocated here.
From California. Yeah, which is really cool.
Yeah. Had 70, just built and opened 70 new market rate units at the Monroe and Lafayette. That was a project that
and that's also technically in the Laplace neighborhood.
In the Laplace neighborhood near downtown.
You're seeing a trend right there. So the Laplace area, I mean, like you said, it's contributing to downtown, and it's almost fair to say that it's part of downtown.
Yeah, I just think of like all of those places as like, you know, neighbors, part of the same neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And in a way that if like, you know, I live in Oak Lawn, you know, and so I'm sure when you're in Oak Lawn, you're like, okay, well, I'm on like this side of Congress Street or this side of St. Mary or whatever.
Right.
Everyone else is just like, you're in the St. Streets, right? You know, like it's, you know, the further out you get, the more, you know, the more everybody seems like, you know, it's a little bit nuts that we get so caught up in like where the exact roads are. But yeah, and there's a lot of great things happening in Laplace. And so the trust was and is active in all that, but it does other stuff. The Morgan Freeman movie that was in town,
that was recent.
The trust helped finance that movie. You know, they've just started some a new lending program for folks who are trying to start small businesses, disinvested areas. The trust, we spun off a separate nonprofit to do that lending. It's called Uplift. So it's a lot of good stuff. And I was really very much enjoying all that work. I still love the trust. I love like what it's been able to accomplish. This is just a really good opportunity. I just couldn't pass this up.
So I want to touch on the opportunity at hand that you were able to secure. There were several, like there was a whole application thing where multiple people signed up or applied for the position. I think it was an application process. And so there are multiple names in the bucket. And with the former CEO, Anita Begnode, whose shoes may never be filled completely unless I could be proven wrong, but I feel like you could do that. But she was a powerhouse. She was just very, very. She had a good, strong personality for the position. She didn't let anybody seemingly run over her. Like she stood her ground, and that's what I got from her. And I've had multiple meetings with her, especially for the Performing Arts Center that Downtown was pushing for. And I don't know the status of that because I know that there were renderings and everything that were pushed out, and we're trying to do that. But so I guess where I'm going with this is with the outgoing CEO and you coming in, where do you see things that Anita succeeded at, and where do you see things that could be focused on more now that there's a new role?
Yeah. I love that question. I love that question because Anita is like one of my dear friends. And, a couple of people have said, oh, you've got big shoes to fill. And I'm like, I don't think of Anita's shoes as big. I think of them as like never stopping moving. Oh, yeah. Right? Yes. Like Anita was just like, I mean, she's still around. It's like she's in Virginia, so she's dead to me. But like, she's still around until she comes back to Lafayette, Right. No, Anita is one of the most energetic, just absolute go-getter sort of people that I've ever known in my life. And in so many ways, she just kind of took Downtown and put it on her back and was like, we're going to like just power our way through this thing. Right. I am very impressed with the staff that Anita built. Anita has put together, a lot of folks don't kind of realize this, but I'm the CEO of two organizations, technically. Yep. There's the DDA, which is sort of the quasi-public agency that has the millage and is able to do some of the development type things. And then there's the DLU that runs the Downtown Live event and that does a lot of our outreach and policy and advocacy stuff. And that's total. It's a staff of about 7 people. And that staff that Anita put together really is like a remarkable, talented group of people. They had to be because they had to keep up with Anita, right?
Right.
Like, there's no other way to do it. Like if you're going to keep up with Anita, you better have your act together.
Yeah, you get some good shoes on.
Yeah, and I think that's going to free me up to really focus on some very key issues that in a lot of ways I think of as Anita has teed up, and if she had not had that great opportunity to go elsewhere, this is the work that she would be doing right now.
Yeah.
One is we've really got to get a handle on what happens after 10 o'clock at night downtown, right? We still
talking about the bar scene.
Yep. I'm glad that we have all this activity. I'm not complaining about that, but we still need to get to a point where it feels a little bit more ordered, a little bit more in control. I think there's still too much of an element, and I think the police would tell you this. I think the bar owners would tell you this. I think the folks that come down to party at 10, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock at night would tell you this. We still haven't figured out the right balance between having a good time and having what everyone would feel is a safe, clean environment, right? So we've got to tackle that. That's on the list.
Okay, so that's one big issue. Obviously, I didn't know that was a big issue. Still, so how does it compare? I know this is big comparison, but I'm using it as an example. So you have New Orleans, and you have Bourbon Street and all that.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Going to Bourbon Street. For a lot of people can be fun, but it also for some can be the biggest anxiety that you can have because there's so many people, and New Orleans is just even more culturally different, and with the amount of people, like you just never know what to expect. Like, how do you compare that? And for the most part, New Orleans, Bourbon Street has felt pretty orderly. Like there's tons of police presence, there's tons of light. And if you don't walk the entire street up and down over and over and over, and you stay kind of in a pocket or in like in one business, it feels relatively fine. What about Lafayette seems unorderly? Like, give me, like, what is your examples for that?
Well, certainly we're not Bourbon Street.
Yeah, right.
And nor should we, that Bourbon Street should be Bourbon Street. And like when people want to do that, they should go to New Orleans and do Bourbon Street.
Yeah.
I think what it is if we're going to have really finally crack the code and get the full complement of residential uses downtown and all the things that come with that, right? The all the amenities that people talk about, I want more produce and, better, restaurants or whatever, right? The more places to get your hair cut, right? All the things that people are like, I want this in a neighborhood. We're going to have to look and feel a little bit more like a neighborhood. And you haven't gone out on a Saturday night at midnight probably in a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
But I have two 19-year-olds at home,
okay.
and I can tell you they do, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that activity happening in downtown Lafayette, and we've got, again, this is not. I think I started this whole thing off talking about like the late '90s and like the situation, night and day from that, right? We're not talking about the Strip,
okay,
right? But we still are at a point where we have not reached, and I think the police would tell you this and everything else, we are still getting better at, but have not reached the point where we feel like we have a handle on how folks, for example, don't congregate in parking lots all night.
Okay.
Right? We have a lot of that sort of activity where kids aren't really coming to like go to one of the establishments. They're coming to like see their friends
and hang out.
And now we've got 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 kids who most of them, quite frankly, are not from Lafayette. We got a lot of like regional sort of draw. Yeah. And they're coming to hang out in our parking lots. Well, we're not equipped to handle that downtown, right? You talk about Bourbon Street, like they've developed a sort of an operational infrastructure on, okay, well, we know that this is a draw. We know that it's worth it, right? We have the tourism dollars to show.
Yeah.
And so here's how we're going to manage that. And here's how we're going to like take care of that. Well, for the number of clubs we have and for the capacity that they have, we should be able to manage that. But that's not what's happening on our streets. We actually have so much more activity happening on our streets that's not getting into the bars and actually spending money in our downtown, right? And so we've got to get a handle on that. And we've got to figure out how are we going to manage that? Because quite frankly, when people come in and I'm trying to sell them on residential living, then I need to follow through on that. And there are things that happen past midnight downtown that even in a downtown living environment, like, you're not moving out into the country, like out with the cows and like,
there's going to be noise.
Yeah, there's going to be noise. There's going to be everything, but we can still do better. And so that's going to be on our list is how do we, again, working with LCG, working with the police, working with the bar owners, working with the restaurant owners, working just as a giant business community all together. How do we make sure that we're providing the best experience for everybody across the board?
Okay. Yeah, I like that. So kind of stemming from that, what about this is a perceived issue, and I don't really think it's that big of an issue. I don't know if you know where I'm headed with this, is people, anytime downtown is mentioned in the news or in a development that I'm talking about, people that live in the country that are happy with quiet, no fuss issues, whenever they come to downtown, maybe they have jury duty or maybe there's a business that they want to go to, they experience the one-off, maybe a couple of occasions where somebody who's less fortunate than them approaches them asking either for money or a lot of times, even my personal experience is very frequent times I see the same people approaching me and I start to recognize them and remember their names. And every single time they're just looking to earn money, either cleaning a window or maybe if you have an office, like, can I clean your office windows? Can I clean your car windows? And they want change or some money from that. So I guess my question is, for a lot of people, they would call it homelessness. Some people call it houselessness, whatever you want to call it. Is that situation a real situation, or is that something that you guys are looking at? Like, what does that look like for downtown?
Absolute real situation.
Okay.
Now, I think that sometimes people don't always know how to talk about it and might have sort of the misperception might be about exactly what the problem is and what to do about the problem. But the reality is we are as a community having a crisis of homelessness right now. Catholic Charities has kind of raised the red flag a few months ago and has brought in some experts, and they're kind of leading like this panel discussion with some agencies and folks in the city, people that are charged to do this. But yeah, earlier when I'm talking about the boundaries between Laplace, Freetown, downtown are not that important. This is one of those issues where we all are feeling the same sort of pressure right now. There's a lot of different reasons, but the numbers are, for whatever reason, post-COVID, Louisiana has one of the highest increases in the homeless population in the country, by far.
Wow.
By far. And so it's not just us, it's Baton Rouge, it's New Orleans, it's the whole state. And so, across the board, those agencies that are dealing with those folks have had, are up to here and are having a hard time like keeping up with it. And you're starting to see that spill out. What people who work and provide services to that population say it's more visible now, right? The people that are in need of services are out there more because there's more of them, and there's also some logistical things that are happening right now in the city that are making it difficult. So that is a conversation that we're going to be actively involved in. Now, I do think that people's perception sometimes of what am I supposed to do about that or how should I feel about that is a little bit, I think that you like me know that like 99.9% of people are just these are folks who have fallen on a hard time and just, are just trying to get by like everyone else. Right. And the reason why folks like that end up often in a downtown environment is because that's where a lot of people are. And like you kind of congregate to a space like that. But, no, the reality is like that is a conversation that we're going to have to be engaged in at downtown. We are helping, along with the Community Foundation, helping co-sponsor some of those discussions with the Catholic Charities. But that's an issue, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you talked on that because it was something that I see often in comment sections and about downtown. And a lot of people use that as the one and only reason that they don't want to come to downtown, aside from the perceived notion that there's no place to park, which there's plenty of parking.
Plenty of parking.
Yeah,
there's
plenty of parking.
And plenty of great walks. That's the great thing about parking downtown is even if you had to like walk a block to get to where you want to go, there's something to see while you're taking a walk. Oh, yeah.
So what's interesting is you can walk, as long as you're able-bodied, you can walk downtown in like less than 20 minutes, 30 minutes, like all up and down Jefferson and see the entire strip. Mm-hmm. So that's not a big issue. I think a lot of people say it's a big issue, and I think Park Mobile? Mm-hmm. I think it was also a bigger issue for people that just didn't carry cash or change. Mm-hmm. I hated going to downtown before Park Mobile because I never had change, and at that time I don't think credit cards or cards were used, or unless they had changed it recently. But I was like,
it's very convenient now.
Yeah, it's super convenient. Like if you have a card, you can pay with card, you can still pay with change, and I use the app. Even there's like a 35-cent convenience fee to use it, but I pull up my phone, I look at the number at the thing, boom, I'm parked, and I can max it out to 2 hours, and it's $1.50 for 2 hours. And if I have a meeting that's a productive meeting, that $1.50 doesn't matter.
Right.
Or if I'm meeting some people for lunch, I include it as part of the lunch budget or whatever.
Right.
So I know we're at about 45 minutes or so here. I kind of want to start closing off by asking you, what are some fun things that you see happening in downtown over the next 2 to 3 years? Like, what are some things that people should be looking out for and enjoying?
I love this question. All right. So one big thing is going to be pay attention to Vermilion Street, right? I think that most folks, when you think about downtown, the picture in your head is Jefferson Street, obviously, right?
Yeah.
It's beautiful, cypress trees, streetscape, the whole bit, right? But the reality is like, there's a lot more land mass to downtown than just Jefferson Street. And there's a lot happening right now in Vermilion. And so, the retail along Vermilion, Wild Child Wines, and that whole area. Agave is great and has been there for a while.
French Press.
But we just had our Small Business Challenge winner in the Sans Souci building. That's going to be great. Magnolia Pantry. It's going to be like pies and gourmet teas and adult beverages, and they're gonna build like a little wraparound porch along that old historic building. You can go look at the new playground that is about to open, thanks to a lot of really great.
And that's an accessible playground, right?
An accessible playground for kids of all abilities to go and be able to use. That's going to be opening soon. That was funded in large part by charitable donations. Then you've got the Ashby Crossing, the old Don's building right there.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Those guys are like blowing and going, and I'm excited. I think they're going to be making an announcement soon about some of their plans. I'm sure you're on that.
I'm waiting for it.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff happening just around that park, and I think that we've got some infrastructure plans too to sort of do some bigger streetscapes on that area. So I'm very excited about that. I have no specific leads. I am not the sort of, I'm not saying this because I got some sort of inside track, but I think that we are at a point where there's going to be a hotel downtown. In the next 2 or 3 years, I think that deal is going to happen. And I'm saying this publicly just because I'm just going to say it, but Anita was also confident about it. And I'm just telling you, I've talked to enough people in the industry. There's room in our market. And it's just, a larger, we have a few hotel rooms downtown, but we can,
the Juliet.
But we can accommodate a lot more. And so I've had some outreach from folks who have been talking about it. And I think that's going to happen. I don't have a prediction of where or when or who or anything else, but I think that's going to happen. And if you think about it, it makes sense.
It makes perfect sense.
We have the largest free music international festival
international.
In the world.
All right.
I can't tell you how many hotel developers in the last few months that I've talked to, and they're like, well, do you have any draws? And I'm like, well, I don't know, Festival International, and they're like, oh, you explain to them what it is, and they're like, oh, okay, well, yeah,
and thousands of people,
and they're like, well, where is that? And you're like, oh, it's downtown, and they're like, oh, it's in your downtown. And you're like, yeah. And they're like, oh, okay,
block off a street.
They're taking notes, right? So I think that's going to happen. We're going to have, on March 13th, one Acadiana is bringing in a guy named Jeff Speck. He's going to talk about walkability, and he's going to focus specifically on making better connections between UL and downtown.
Yeah.
And I think the possibilities they did a survey of UL students over the last year or two because the school was trying to get a feel on what's your experience like while you're here, and why would you stay or why would you not stay? And so one of the questions they asked was how far away is downtown, right?
Right.
And the average answer was 4 miles, right? Because it seems so far away. It does not seem like an easy thing to do to get downtown from campus. But
it's pretty much cat-a-corner.
It's pretty much, they're pretty much connected, right?
Yeah.
And so March 13th, for part of the CivicCon event, one Acadian is going to bring in Jeff Speck, who literally wrote the book on walkability and economic development. And what's great is that UL is involved in this conversation, and we're involved in this conversation. And so I think for the next year or two, we're going to be talking pretty detailed about whether it's McKinley, Johnson Street, St. Landry, Congress, how do we start knitting together the campus, with the rest of the community in a way that, there's a ton of potential there if you start thinking about for what type of university activities could be happening in campus or downtown and vice versa. So I'm very excited about that. I'm excited about a lot of that stuff.
Dude, it sounds exciting.
Mostly excited. I will get fussed at the office if I don't remind people. Tonight is the first Downtown Alive.
There you go.
6 o'clock, Park Sans Souci. Lovers is the band. I'm almost 50 years old, so I'm not going to pretend to be cool enough to say that I've seen them before. But all of the millennial and Gen Zers in the office are very psyched and very pumped about this group. And they told me that they toured before with Cowboy Mouth, and I know Cowboy Mouth.
Yeah.
And so I figure they're pretty cool.
Okay.
So I'm excited about that. That's tonight at 6.
Nice. And I just put the website up on the screen, but I'll put it again. It's check out downtownlafayette.org. I think you have an events page on there with all the stuff happening, especially with Downtown Alive. Also, I think it's fair to mention, of course, the many different festivals that happen in downtown, not just Festival International, but the Po' Boy Festival and all these other things. Also, in the middle of this month, I think March 16th is Patty in the Park. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned millennial and Gen Z, but I think you're Gen X. Yeah. But you might know this.
I'm Gen X.
You know Paul Wall, right? Do you know who Paul Wall is?
I mean, okay. Yeah. I'm trying to like not have a memory blank in front of like
okay.
A podcast right now, but...
Sorry. Let me. Okay. There's a song called "Sitting Sideways." He's from Texas. He's a Houston rapper.
Okay, so
it may not be your genre.
You're gonna pull a rapper on me.
It may not be your genre, but he is the people's champ. Let me just tell you,
all right.
He is the people's champ, and he is the coolest guy. Like he's getting up there in age, and he's got tons of gray hair. So he's probably more in line with your age range. I'm trying to be sensitive here, but look, no, you look great for your age, and you got a lot of spunk. Look, I'm approaching 40, so I'm feeling the age burn here. Okay, especially with all the Gen Z activity happening, and
they're so exhausting.
That is true, and I think I'm still able to keep up for now. God.
For now.
God. But I'm in an age where I'm starting to feel like I'm still young, but I'm also like, I'm almost 40, and I'm starting to feel like, oh my God, like I like staying home now. But it's weird because now there's trends on TikTok saying that Gen Z looks older for their age than millennials do, and there's like comparisons of like current millennials and how they look like they're still in their late 20s, and Gen Zers look like they're in their late 30s, and it's funny to see that. And there's like thought processes behind it, like the Gen Zers are more stressed out about stuff.
But when you're old, they all look like children to you.
They do.
That's what happens. That's when you'll know, right? You're like, I'm not old yet, but you'll know when you see that, and you're like, I don't see a difference.
I'm getting there. And I'm raising a Gen Alpha kid. It started all over.
Yeah, that's the whole thing now.
Look, Gen Alpha kids are something else, and Gen Z kids are deathly afraid of the Gen Alpha kids.
I need to find something that my Gen Z kids are deathly afraid of, because they're definitely not deathly afraid of me. You know?
No. But Gen Alpha, let me tell you, those kids, they're referenced as the tablet kids, raised up on iPads and tablets. So let's just...
So like the sociopath generation?
I don't know. I do not want my kid to be that. Let me just tell you, I'm trying my best to limit screen time. It is difficult because that's his form of playing games and stuff like that. So we are careful.
I don't know, man. I played a lot of Nintendo when I was growing up.
Me too.
I think it's fine.
Yeah. I think it's fine, but especially with YouTube, we do limit what he watches on YouTube. We're trying to like let him know, like, hey, if you hear anything talking about this, cut it back. Yeah. He's really good at monitoring what he watches, and he knows that we're listening.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I know we got on a tangent here, but I love everything that's happening with downtown over the past 14 years that I've lived here. It's been a great progression of things. I think there's been, if I can remember, you're the third CEO of DDA. Before Anita, there was I can't even remember his name.
Nathan Norris, and then Kathy Weber, who was here for like 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know the three. So Jeff, Anita, and you. Before that, I have no connection. But I look forward to seeing what you do with downtown and DLU and your staff. I'm excited for that. And I look forward to all the developments and the potential of a hotel. That's really exciting.
Yeah, I'm hyping it up, man.
Yeah.
So, like, let's do it, right?
Yeah. Well, look, I'll be here, man. If you have anything that you need to send me to help promote downtown Lafayette development-wise, and if there's any events that may align with that, I'm your guy, man. Send them over.
Well, look, I'm a seriously big fan. Like,
I appreciate that.
Like, since like the first time, like years ago when you started this, I was like, damn, that was a good idea.
It's not the first time I hear that.
I was like, man, that is a really good idea. Like, he's going to kill it.
Look, we're doing all right. I wish I could kill it a little bit stronger, but over the past 5 years, we've really strengthened up our brand per se, and really solidifying that we're here to promote the city, promote small businesses, and we also promote bigger businesses that are not small businesses or local business, but because you need all of that in a functioning city to kind of work together. So I'm doing my best, man.
I'm glad you're doing it.
I get flack sometimes for posting certain businesses, and I do my best with it, but I do appreciate
You keep
that.
it real, man. I appreciate it. Like you obviously like love what you do, and I love that.
I do. I love what I do. So if there's any sponsors out there that loves what we do too, I'll definitely take sponsor money and we'll make it work. All right, Kevin, man, it was great having you on. I'm excited about the future of Downtown Lafayette, and also I am grateful for all the predecessors that came before you and have blazed the path to get you where you are now. And I'm excited to see what you do.
Same. Thanks, man.
All right, man. Guys, that is all we have today. If you want to listen to it after the fact, it's going to be on YouTube as well, video format. It's also going to be on Spotify. You can watch it or listen to it there. And of course, it's on Apple Podcasts and all these other places that you can find your podcast, wherever you want to go. But with that, that is it. We hope you have a great day. And again, Kevin, have a great weekend.
Thanks.
All right, y'all have a good one.